Hey all, I've got Skip back on the show with us today for the second part of this two-part episode series. Such an amazing show talking about excellence in health, and this is such an important topic right now going to the years ahead. It's only going to get tougher, I'd say, for health with budgeting and the amount of demand coming through. Skip sharing this knowledge is such a treat for us all to help us really create that better future. And also remember, he's put the Baptist Management System up on our website under resources. You can get hold of it, have a look at it. It's truly a way to figure out how to deploy excellence within any industry, but particularly health industry. Thanks again, Skip. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we aim to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve and create enduring, high-performance, low-impact enterprises. Learn how to enhance morale, customer and purpose centricity, focus, and calmness. Learn how to create and sustain a culture of excellence at all levels of your organisation.
And I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. We are proudly brought to you in association with SA Partners, a world-leading business transformation consultancy. SA Partners are a truly purposeful company focused on helping organisations achieve sustainable improvement for themselves, others, and the planet. Welcome to episode 163 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. I'm so pleased to have Mr. Skip Steward back on the show with us today to continue the conversation on the Baptist Management System. Last episode, we covered the topic of the model itself and socio-technical systems. And we also spoke about the side of purpose of their model, one of the key pillars of purpose and aligning to that. Today, we're going to explore further on the people and the process side of things. Skip, thank you so much for joining us again.
Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it, Skip. Skip, the pillar of purpose we've covered, and now we're going to talk about people. Now, people, both customer and society, are extremely important. How does respect, humility, trust, and empathy sustain and grow within Baptist healthcare to really keep that going, those principles you got behind that?
Yeah, great question. So once again, to build on what you said, we look at three dimensions, three pillars, you could even call it, of people, process, and purpose. And within people, we have four principles of respect and humility and trust and empathy. But those are principles. Those are principles that are discovered, and those are principles that inform a belief system. But what we really are looking for also is behaviors that manifest themselves. So how do we manifest? If I were to come in with a camera, can I take a picture of the behaviors? And that's what we're looking for. So when a nurse is doing her rounding, if anyone comes anywhere within 10 feet of her, does she speak to them? Does she ask how they're doing? What kind of conversations are we having with our patients, with our people? What are we learning about conversations? We're learning a lot in the Baptist Management System, specifically based on the work of humble inquiry, but the principles are manifesting themselves in different behaviors. Empathy, I don't know of a more empathetic person than our CEO. I'm saying that because that's what I experienced. You say, well, if I were going to take a picture of that, Skip, what would that look like? Well, I'm glad you asked. During the pandemic, I saw our CEO put on some very comfortable N95 mask and walk for hours dressed in scrubs so that he could realize what are the frontline workers dealing with. Hours and hours with very uncomfortable N95 mask and a very hot uniform he had on and drapery and so on. So, and that's just one of many. I've seen our CEO cry with people. I've seen our CEO pray. As an organization, we're a faith-based organization. It's very common that we open up most of our meetings with prayer requests because we have families and we have friends and we have patients that are hurting because we're living in this thing called life. And so it manifests itself in so many different ways, whether the principle of respect or trust or empathy or humility.
Wow, Skip. And Skip, with it from that pillar of people in the Baptist management system, and then also the principles under there, what approaches do you take to help build capability and help people progress and get better at those principles of respect, humility, trust, and empathy?
Yeah, great question. So lots of different opportunities. Let me just use a couple of them and push on me if you want more. But basically, like, for example, one of the elements of the Baptist management system is TWI, job relations. Now, if your listeners have ever heard of TWI, many of them may be familiar with TWI job instructions, which is very popular. But TWI job relations is still practiced in organizations like Toyota and Lego and Boeing and others. What TWI job relations is I like to say it's one of the best ways I know to operationalize respect for every individual. Okay, so you say, well, how does that work? Well, I'm glad you asked. Basically, you're going to have problems as long as you have people. That's normal. We might as well just embrace that. As long as you have human beings, there will be problems. The question is, how do we respond to those problems? Do we respond to them in an objective, respectful way, or do we respond to them in an emotional and reactive way? Unfortunately, many people respond the latter. So TWI job relations not only provides training, but we also provide some tools to help people develop respectful relationships with their people. Humble inquiry is another element of the Baptist management system that's based off the work of Edgar and Peter Schein. It's the second edition of Humble Inquiry. And for any of your listeners that have more of an interest, if you go to our YouTube channel, the Baptist Management System, all you got to do is type in 3 words, Baptist Management System. You'll see our little blue brain. We have 6 videos there under the video tab for Humble Inquiry, another 4 videos that we made with the late Dr. Edgar Schein and his son Peter on what is culture. And I just put up a video yesterday on relationship mapping, another tool to help us think about. But why is that so important? Well, the way that Ed Schein would say is that life is a series of conversations, and everything happens through conversations and relationships. So in our conversations, we can either be respectful, but many times in our conversations, unintentionally, we may not realize it, we're being incredibly disrespectful. We're talking down to people. Let me give an example of that. I'll just pick on where I live. In the Western world, we have a natural tendency to tell. We want to tell. Sometimes that is even manifested in our desire to want to give advice. Michael Bungay-Stainer, a recent guest on our podcasts, he wrote an amazing book called The Advice Trap. Cannot recommend that enough. But it can be incredibly disrespectful many times in the way that we do that. How well do we listen? There's an amazing author that does some great work on listening from Australia. Deep Listening is one of his books. Just a great. Oscar is his first name. I'm going blank right now on the last name, but great. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, not on Deep Listening.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking you were going to head down David Rock path, but
no, you can look it up. He's in Australia, but great author. And but how well do we listen? Do we listen to reply, or do we listen to understand? And many times we tend to listen to reply. So our conversations but we do a lot of training with job relations. We also do training with Humble Inquiry. We also do training with the work of the Arbinger books, The Outward Mindset and Leadership and Self-Deception. We also do training around Simon Sinek's works of understanding our why. What's our why? And in healthcare, leaders have a big why. Most of them, this is a calling for them. And so we want to embrace that calling. but how we interact with not only the patient, but with each other will either show behaviors of respect or disrespect. It'll either show that we're approaching with humility or lack thereof, and so on.
Yeah, it sounds a really powerful training and development program and coaching support that you've got there to really bring those principles to life and live that people pillar, Skip. Skip, you understand that you were a coach by Edgar Schein, and really keen to know, mate, what are some of the key insights that you gained from your time you spent with Edgar, who's such a legend in the space of culture and leadership?
Yeah, I was very blessed to have a 2+ year relationship with him where we every single Tuesday we got online together, and it proved me I didn't think a relationship could get developed just online. I was wrong. And back in October of 2022, we met up at his house, and I spent time speaking out at Stanford and spent time with his son and daughter-in-law and him, and spent time in his rose garden, and just had a rich relationship with Ed. And there's just so many insights, but some of the ones that come to the top of my head was that he would say many times that he would say, Skip, I've noticed something about improvement people over all my years. Remember, he was 94 when he passed away in January. And I said, well, what's that, Ed? He said, many times y'all tend to get content seduced with the technical, and you give lip service to the social. Oh, that stung, because I've been guilty of that, of getting seduced with the technical and giving lip service to the social. Some other insights that he would always give is, I remember one time talking to him and saying, Ed, in my 31-year career, I've seen leaders in every single industry out there ask their people for ideas, suggestions, concerns, obstacles, and rarely do you ever hear anybody speak up. And Ed's response was classic. He said, well, think about it, Skip. If the relationship between that leader and the people they're asking the question to is nothing more than transactional, then those people may feel like there's more to lose than there is to gain. And so that's where we started getting very deep into humble inquiry. They have a 4-stage relationship: -1, 1, 2, and 3. And Ed would say they didn't create them. They discovered them through looking through the lens of anthropology. But a level 2 is an open and trustful relationship. He would argue most of healthcare was a level 1, transactional. We're very nice, we're very polite, but we keep our distance. But what you need in areas where risk is the highest, you're not going to have it everywhere. You need to strive towards a level 2, an open and trustful relationship. In those relationships, you start to get answers to questions that you don't even know to ask. So now when I'm walking down the hall at a hospital, Brad says, hey, Skip, I thought I'd let you know, don't step on that landmine over there. In other words, you're giving me answers to questions I didn't even know to ask you to begin with, right? Because of our relationship, because you feel psychologically safe, you feel valued, because I've been empathetic to you, because I've shown you respect. I've led with humility. And so there's different ways that it isn't just activities that we do that can show respect. Our systems can show respect, can build empathy, can build trust, but also our conversations. Once again, life is a series of conversations, and everything happens through a conversation and a relationship.
Hey, Skip, we've just mentioned that, really language is powerful and a critical part of the whole people pillar, and the language that we use and the attitude we put behind it. But you also mentioned process and systems. I'm keen to now head to that third pillar of the Baptist management system, process. And Skip, what hangs under that? What are the key principles you focus on with the process pillar?
Yeah, great question. So there's 5 principles that make up that process principles. One of them is perfection. I know some people might kind of choke on that a little bit. It's a mindset of perfection. It's a mindset that nothing is good enough. What we're happy with today has got to be better next year and next year and next year. So it's, one principle is perfection. Another one is process focused. There's an old analogy that comes from Toyota about being hard on the process and easy on the people. When we're not getting the results that we want, it's because something's flawed in your process. The scientific thinking, we want to promote scientific thinking. We do that a lot with our kata thinking. We have something called coaching workout. We do a lot of things around the kata world, 8-step problem solving. We do a lot of things to promote that principle of scientific thinking. Quality at the source is another principle. We want to make sure that we do it right the first time. We don't want that defect to be passed along to someone else. We want to fix it right then and there. Maybe we have to mistake proof a process so that someone can't make a mistake. And then the last principle in those 5 principles under process is flow and pull, which is a principle that healthcare professionals struggle with. I'll be the first to admit that. That is a principle that healthcare professionals struggle with. An easy way to think about flow and pull is when you think about flow, think about a river. As the river flows, what gets in its way? Well, if you look at it, you say, well, those branches are in the way, that big boulder's in the way, that beaver dam's in the way. All of those things are in the way. Well, how do we start to remove some of those things so there's a natural flow? The human brain tends to naturally want to batch things. Batching is not good, generally speaking. Now you say, well, where does the word pull come in? Well, there's an old analogy that says flow if you can and pull if you must. So pulling is I'm pulling based off of a signal, which is still so much better than batching. Many people have fooled themselves to think that batching is this really good thing. In most cases, batching actually produces a lot of waste. But those are the 5 principles within that process dimension.
And with it, Skip, I can understand in a hospital context, quality at the source and being able to error-proof key processes is critical. But being able to have patients smoothly flow into the hospital and through the process and out is also critical. But batching is the concern. Like, where do you see batching in a hospital? I'm thinking you see it with people sitting in emergency, waiting to go into the hospital. Where else do you see batching?
I think the real question is where you don't see it. In other words, it's everywhere. It's prevalent everywhere in a healthcare system. So in the United States right now, there's probably not, I don't know about this, but there's one of the biggest issues out there with the struggles that we're dealing with is this external metric called length of stay. How long does a patient actually stay? And we get judged off that based off the government and insurance payers and so on. But length of stay is different than patient flow. Length of stay is an external lagging metric. Flow, we see it from the very beginning all the way from the time the patient comes in until the patient is discharged. So we're doing some really important work right now on documenting how we as an organization think about patient flow. We're developing schematics for what does that look like? How do we take something very complex and attempt to make it simple? How do we attach a document to that, capturing our present thinking? But the flow shows up in so many different ways. And I'll just use a couple examples. So when that patient comes into an ED, how do we let that patient know instantly what's the status, what's going on, when will you be addressed, where are you at all times, right? And how quickly are we going to try to move them into the next step of the process? That's one example, just one of many. Here's another example. It's very normal in healthcare for a patient at some point on that journey to have some kind of a reading like an MRI or an echo or a CAT scan or something of that nature. Well, from the point of request and until the point it's actually done, how long does that take? How can we flow that easily? Let's go with another easy example. So now Brad, the patient, is being discharged. We've put Brad into a wheelchair to wheel him down to the place where someone's going to pick him up. when does the EVS, when does the janitorial group get a signal that it's time to clean that room? Is it delayed? In most situations, it is. Or is there an instant handing off of the baton? All of those things and hundreds and thousands of other things has either a positive or a negative impact on how well that patient flows. Let's go with another analogy. If that patient could possibly be discharged on a Saturday, why were they not discharged? Oh, because there was no physician to look at that. Okay, so now we've forced in a delay that was unnecessary. How could we flow that thing? How could we remove the big boulder from the stream? So I could go on, and I thousands and thousands of examples that either impede or help a patient to flow through a process.
Yeah, Skip, I love it. I love the examples you've given. And I guess when you look at any organization you're in, the consideration of flow is such an important one, isn't it? Like it's ultimately...
It really is. It's true in every organization. I know that you wrote a well-known book on agile cells, Brad, and it's true there too. It's true in every single bit. Listen, it just happened to me recently. We had some plumbing issues, and my wife called the biggest, the most powerful, the biggest staffed, and supposedly the best plumbers in town. 3 weeks later, it still isn't working. And so when I asked my wife to call, I said, well, surely they have processes that can tell you what the status is, but they couldn't. They couldn't tell her if it would be another 3 weeks or another 3 months. And so Skip had to call in a friend, and in 24 hours, someone came and fixed it. But it shouldn't have to be that way, right? And so all processes have some element of flow to them. The only question is, how well do they flow or not?
Yeah. And there's all the other principles that we've spoken about, all then hang off of that principle of flow to either make it work or not work.
That's right.
That interconnected
exactly right.
web of excellence principles.
That's right.
Skip, you and the team have, led an amazing journey with Baptist that you continue to do. And I really appreciate the knowledge you've given so far. But mate, if you had 2 minutes to give someone a tip in healthcare or any organization, what would be that 2-minute tip for them around this journey that you've been on and what you'd recommend they do?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think that healthcare professionals are people that have been called to this profession. You want to leverage that passion and that calling. Nobody shows up at work wanting to do a bad job. Nobody does. They want to do a good job, and they're passionate. They have a passion that you can't train. They've already got it. That's why they went into healthcare. And how do you leverage that passion in a direction that's going to improve patient care? And that can look a lot of different ways. It's not about the tools. It's not about the technique. It's not about using fancy words. It's about, how do we get every person to improve every day, everywhere? That's very difficult. That doesn't come overnight. And so you have to meet people where they're at and be empathetic to the context in addition to the content. Understand where people are at. I get very frustrated when I hear people sometimes say, well, leadership's not committed. Time out. That's not a fair characterization. We've got to look at the context of the situation before we throw out broad brush accusations of that nature. So I think let's take the passion that they already have to improve patient care, because they want to do that. All of them want to do that. And how do we leverage that for the patient?
Yeah, that's awesome, Skip. I love that. You got to understand the context, show empathy, understand the context. But in healthcare, you certainly do have that strong North Star that is going to provide that energy for people to move forward and improve, which is amazing. Skip, what's been a recent insight for you, mate? What's been a recent learning you've had?
For me personally is I've been surprised. I listen to lots of podcasts and things. I've been surprised at how little I've heard improvement groups, improvement sciences talk about the fragileness that the pandemic exposed. The pandemic didn't just expose fragileness in our physical systems and labor systems. They exposed fragility in all things. And so there's a famous coach here in America named Nick Saban. He's the coach of the Alabama. He has a famous saying that says, don't let a crisis go to waste. And so we've been trying to leverage the after effects of that crisis so that the Baptist management system is more robust than it ever was in the last 10 years. And that's probably another conversation for another day, but we're working very hard to make it significantly more robust.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're improving the Baptist management system. Yeah, putting PDSA across that ongoing, which is great. Skip, I really appreciate your time, appreciate your knowledge, everything you have done and continue to do for the future. It's truly amazing. Skip, how can people reach out to you, get engaged with the podcast, read books, learn more from you into the future?
Yeah, I would say we have a weekly podcast every Thursday called Connecting the Dots. And you'll find that it's on Spotify and Apple and all those things. We have a little symbol, all these dots connected with BMS in the middle. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which is free, Baptist Management System. You can go out there and it's a homegrown YouTube channel. We'll probably start creating some YouTube shorts also. And then, I've done many webinars out there for the Shingo Institute and things of that. I just recently did one called Just What the Doctor Ordered back in July. So those are some of the easy ways to connect.
Yeah, Skip, I really appreciate it, mate. Thanks for your time and knowledge and helping us create a better future, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Cheers, Skip. Bye for now. What a great episode. Remember, you can go to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website to resources and download the Baptist management system. That'll give you a great example of an enterprise excellence approach and model that gets led every day within Baptist Health to truly help the organization achieve excellence. There were two key takeaways for me from this episode. Firstly, understand the content of why leaders or others may not engage in excellence journey and show empathy to this and understand. Now, often when people reject or seem cold on an approach that we're looking to take, we get defensive and then they get more defensive. Just sitting in that place of deeply looking to understand can actually uncover some information that could really help you and that person both become advocates and partners on that excellence journey. Such great advice from Skip. The second key takeaway for me was the language of socio-technical system. The interplay in enterprise excellence between human factors and technical systemic factors, and how this is all connected in an ecosystem like a web. I love that language of socio-technical system because it's too true, that element of leadership and behavior and then systems to truly create enterprise excellence. And again, that's all shown in the Baptist management system that you can download from the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website. Thanks again for your time and knowledge, Skip. Thanks for helping us create a better future in such an important industry. You're a champion, mate. Bye for now.